I'm Barbara Preston. I'm editor of the Montgomery News, one of the few remaining independent newspapers in New Jersey. We're primarily in Montgomery Township, but we also distribute to Hillsborough, Rocky Hill, Princeton, Hopewell, and parts of Franklin. And I wanted to introduce you to a member of the Raritan student body.
I got it. Yeah, I'm Preston Clausen, a member of RVCC's student government. I'm the vice president of info and media. I just want to thank everyone for coming out here today to attend this. You know, further participation is a very important thing, and it's great to see so many people be so involved. I just want you guys to know that we do have these little note cards that you can write your own questions on for us to give to the candidates. So if you need one of those, just raise your hand. One of us can walk over, give you a note card and a pen. And then when you're done writing your question, we can take those note cards and bring them up here. Thanks.
Raritan Valley Community College is hosting us tonight, and we're very thankful for them allowing us to have the forum here. We're also grateful to Princeton Community Television. They are videotaping this event live, and they will also be posting it on their website. Without further ado, I think we should probably just get started in the interest of time. And best of luck to our candidates.
So I'm Sandra Matson. I will be moderating this portion of the forum with candidates for the Senate in the 16th Legislative District. Just a reminder that the League of Women Voters, who is the primary sponsor of this evening, is a nonpartisan political nonprofit. We do take stands on positions, but we never support or oppose candidates for office or political parties. So we will begin just with a quick reminder of the format. Each candidate, again, will have 90 seconds to respond to your questions and those questions submitted online, with a 30-second rebuttal allowed if they so wish. Again, our timekeeper is in the front row with a yellow and a red card. Yellow means you have 15 seconds remaining. Red, that you should finish your sentence without too many semicolons. And we've already heard that it's being live streamed and will be rebroadcast. So the candidates are, to my right for Senate from representing the 16th Legislative District, Republican candidate Michael Pappas, and next to him is the Democratic candidate Andrew Zwicker. And they drew for opening statements. So Mr. Zwicker, 90 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, the Montgomery News, Raritan Valley Community College, and Princeton Community Television for hosting this forum tonight. And thank you to all of you who are here and to those who are watching online. It's especially fitting that we're here having a debate to replace retiring State Senator Kip Bateman at Raritan Valley Community College, a place where his father was instrumental in starting not just this college, but the entire community college system. My name is Andrew Zwicker, and I've had the honor of representing the 16th Legislative District in the New Jersey General Assembly since winning by just 78 votes in 2015, when I became the first Democrat in our district's history, and I'm the first physicist to ever serve in the New Jersey legislature. I've spent my entire professional career working on alternative energy. In the legislature, I'm the chair of the Science Committee, and I'm proud to have sponsored over 200 pieces of legislation that have become law, including more than 24 that I've written, to protect our environment, ensure clean air and water for all, innovative ways to grow our economy, preserve farmland, preserve open space, and to ensure that access to voting in New Jersey is easier. Most recently, I've worked with my colleagues in the legislature to combat the economic toll on COVID-19 has left upon our small businesses and our communities, helping them get back on their feet and to thrive. I'm proud to be endorsed by over 24 groups, including nurses and teachers, police and firefighters, labor unions, environmentalists, and so many more.
Time.
Thank you, and I look forward to tonight's debate.
Mr. Pappas.
Thank you. I want to thank the League, the Princeton Community Station, Television, the Montgomery News, and Raritan Valley Community College. I'm particularly pleased to see the students that are here, so important for the future of our state. You know, the people of New Jersey have been struggling for a number of years, and this past year with the onslaught of the pandemic, there has been an untold devastation from individual families who have lost loved ones, individuals whose businesses have been decimated, and the present plan or lack of a plan from the state legislature is one of the reasons why I'm running for the state legislature. 1/3 of all small businesses in our state have closed permanently over the past year. The state's reaction to the pandemic with regard to the business community has been disjointed. Large businesses were able to remain open with limited restrictions. Small businesses were required to close, and again, 1/3 of them have been closed permanently. Legislative oversight is very critical for the state legislative bodies. This present legislature, my opponent in particular, has ignored that very critical role in legislative oversight. If I'm in the state Senate, no matter who the governor is, I will take that constitutional responsibility very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll jump right into questions. The first will go to Mr. Pappas. What are your thoughts about creating K through 12 regional or countywide school districts?
The cost of education, as has been said here earlier, is 2/3 of every property tax bill that is paid is to local school districts. The state of New Jersey and the state legislature, and I believe my opponent, is in support of a measure that would require school districts to merge. New Jersey has a tradition of home rule. I certainly do not support requirements to force or coerce school districts to merge, for that matter, for municipalities to merge. It needs to be done on a voluntary basis, and I know in some instances merging of certain services have been studied to determine whether it's cost effective or not. But freedom and opportunity is important. Education is very critical. I think the costs have gone out of control, and primarily, in my view, because of administrative costs. The costs of duplication of administration of school districts is one of the primary areas of where property taxes are impacted and could be lessened if there were legislators who would tackle that. I do not believe the present legislative majority, and certainly my opponent, who's beholden to the teachers' union, would move in that direction.
Mr. Zwicker.
Thank you. New Jersey does have more school districts than it has municipalities. And there is a cost, as my opponent just said, that is directly related to property taxes. And so there, we're in agreement. Where we diverge is, I do not believe that we should be forcing school districts to merge. What we should be doing is incentivizing, and doing so with always the eyes of the student, and ensuring that we do so in a way that puts education in our children first. There's no doubt that there are efficiencies to be found, but to do so is going to take a concerted effort by stakeholders across the educational spectrum, from students and parents to administrators and teachers and support staff. That's not an easy thing to do, but it is certainly something that we need to be looking at as a state. Thank you.
Edwin, with an additional 30 seconds. Comment?
Yeah, I'd just like to elaborate on that. I've served as a local official. I've served at the county level, certain federally. property taxes continue to be a real problem in New Jersey. As I go around this district, affordability is the #1 issue on people's minds. Many people talk about their exit strategy, and the cost of property taxes is first and foremost, along with the state income taxes. Again, school districts should be permitted to consider smart regionalization, but the coercion that I think is represented in this legislation is not the way to go.
Time. Issues?
No.
No. All right, the next question goes to Mr. Zwicker. Due to a need to decarbonize the energy sector, do you support New Jersey investing in small modular reactors, in other words, nuclear technology? It goes on to say states like Wyoming have begun this investment, and it would fit in with New Jersey's green energy record to do the same. So it's what is your position on small modular reactors, nuclear technology, when we're talking about energy policy?
I suspect that there's a physicist in the audience who asked that question. The question is really about how do we decarbonize? What is the role of nuclear energy? What is the role of solar and of wind? And perhaps one day, what is the role of fusion energy? So small nuclear reactors are a type of fission energy that have less radioactive fuel. But they also have their own problems. But there is no doubt that nuclear fission is a bridge to a fully 100% renewable solar and wind energy future. New Jersey is approximately 40% powered by nuclear, and that's how we are keeping our carbon levels as low as they are. There's more to be done. New Jersey is aggressively becoming a leader when it comes to offshore wind and is ready to put forth 7,500 megawatts over the next decade. New Jersey is also aggressively moving to build out solar. And so it is this portfolio, it is this combination of energy that is going to allow us to continue to be a leader when it comes to how we can decarbonize and show the rest of the country and the rest of the world how we can move to a carbon-free energy.
Mr. Pappas.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Small nuclear reactors.
Yeah, I'm picking up the, yes, I thought, well, it was happenstance that it first went to Mr. Zwicker. So essentially the question is saying, with our need to decarbonize, should this particular nuclear technology be part of what we're looking at in order to accomplish that?
Energy production is probably one of the more critical issues facing this generation and future generations, as well as potable water. Options, allowing the free market to invest to provide users of energy, consumers of energy, greater options is very critical. There are programs that have taken place that provide financial incentives for individual property owners to utilize more energy efficient devices, and that is something certainly I support. What I do express concern about is the cost, the financial cost on ratepayers and users and consumers of energy if the present path continues without any analysis. I believe solar energy is very critically important, and many people want to take advantage of that. Wind energy, or energy produced from large windmills, is very critical. But there are environmental concerns, such as what's recently occurred in Northern Europe, where the huge windmills are not turning because the North Sea winds have died down. And what has been the reaction of that is that coal and natural gas generation facilities have had to be powered up, and costs of energy have skyrocketed. That's a concern.
30 seconds?
Sure. I do agree that we need to do a careful analysis of whatever type of energy source we're going to build out and put forth. We also have to make sure that that cost analysis, while being very careful that it does not have a negative impact on small businesses and people, takes into the fact that if we do nothing, the cost will be even more. And that's got to be a part of what we're considering.
I'm good. The next question will sound familiar, but I am going to use it a second time. First to Mr. Pappas. Part of the American Rescue Plan, which saw a little over $6 billion come to New Jersey state government. There's $4 billion of it remaining still to be allocated. How do you think that money should be spent or allocated to be spent?
Part of the discussion has to be what the legislature has traditionally done, especially over the last few years, and Mr. Zwicker in particular, what his stance has been on fiscal matters. He has voted on several occasions to raise state income taxes. He has voted to raise property taxes. He has voted to institute a rain tax. He has supported what's the highest corporate tax rate in the nation. And he supported the $9.9 billion debt. Affordability. So when you get $4 billion from the federal government, what do you do with it? Well, you try to impact property taxes. Mr. Lukac and Mr. Panico spoke of body cameras, unfunded mandate. Great thing. I support it totally. But one town in particular has over $500,000 startup cost with a $190,000 grant, plus the residual costs. It's a great cause, but if Mr. Zwicker and the majority in the legislature felt it was so important, they should have fully funded it. That's a direct cost of property taxes. Lastly, and I don't have a lot of time, which hopefully we'll get to later, is the impact, infrastructure impact that municipalities have experienced because of Hurricane Ida. Those funds should be used to help local governments offset property tax increases or additional debt that they would have to incur to cover those costs.
Time. Mr. Zwicker.
Thank you. I'm going to try to actually answer the question. There's a couple of places we need to do. Number one, we have a significant infrastructure problem in this state. We are a state that commutes to our jobs more often than not. We're a state that is in our cars. Our roads and our bridges are in bad shape. This is exactly the type of money and funding that we need to improve our infrastructure. We also have to improve our computer infrastructure. We've seen over the last 18 months how our lives are now so much online. And so ensuring that we get high-speed internet to our rural communities and into our urban cities is going to be key, because that's how you thrive. And then finally, we want to make sure that we're getting this money into people who were really hurting over the last 18 months and getting them back on their feet, individually, their businesses, their homes. This is how we need to spend this money, and that's what we're going to do over the next couple of years.
Do I have 30 seconds?
Yes, you always have 30 seconds if you wish.
Thank you. It's priorities, it's perspective. $4 billion is a lot of money for anyone, even for the people of New Jersey. I talked about the tax increases, the property taxes increases. The state legislature, Andrew Zwicker was a part of instituting raising property taxes for a very, very worthy cause. If you feel body cameras are important, then you should have funded them fully for your municipalities and every municipality in the state.
The next question goes first to Mr. Zwicker. The question is, why do you think that community colleges have increased tuition and made it less affordable for people trying to seek higher education? I'm going to tweak that slightly and say, what should the legislature be doing to try to turn that around, increased tuition, specifically talking about community colleges?
Okay. And it's a wonderful question to answer here in Raritan Valley Community College. You know, the cost of providing a high-quality education, like happens here and happens throughout our community college system, is from a function of different things. And we need to make sure that we are approaching that right, which means how do we put the money in, which is the state's obligation, to cover the fair share of costs. We talk a lot about a K through 12 school funding formula and changes there. We've talked less about the fact that it's beholden upon the state to put in their share of the cost for our community colleges and our public four-year universities. So the first thing we want to do as legislators is ensure that the state is putting those funds in. Then the rest of this is going to be to ensure that each of our community colleges is working as efficiently as possible. And I know this is one where in particular they've kept costs down because of that ability.
For many years, I was a member of the Somerset County Board of Freeholders, serving along with Kip Bateman, and I was proud to support many of the expansions of the facilities on this very campus. But you know what, ladies and gentlemen? Those increased in services available to the students of Somerset and Hunterdon counties were primarily paid for on the backs of the property taxpayers of Somerset and Hunterdon counties. Traditionally, the state of New Jersey has not fully funded community colleges. And if Mr. Zwicker feels that support of community colleges is important, as I certainly do, then he should have advocated and should advocate, as I will advocate, for fully funding the state's share of community colleges. That has not been done traditionally for years. Property taxpayers of these communities have paid for the beautiful facilities and the exceptional staff, not the state legislature. And so Mr. Panico spoke of funding for the school districts, and you voted the same as Mr. Fryman. But what about community colleges? People in this state need community colleges that are thriving and expanding. We have that here, but not because of the legislature, because of the taxpayers and the Board of Freeholders of Somerset County and Hunterdon County, and people like Ray Bateman. And if I go to Trenton, I will support fully funding for community colleges.
Okay. This question will go to Mr. Pappas. New Jersey had more nursing home deaths per capita than any other state in the nation. Would you support an independent investigation into the nursing home policies if elected to the Senate?
Absolutely. This is another example of legislative oversight that Andrew Zwicker has not undertaken. When COVID-19 hit, my 95-year-old mother was in a nursing home. Thank goodness she didn't contract COVID-19. But Phil Murphy was on the television every day, because I watch his press conferences every day, and he talked about what the state was doing. Now, at the beginning, I think he and every other governor did the right thing by shutting things down. But one of the things that Phil Murphy did and Andrew Zwicker supported through his silence was requiring nursing homes, like where my mother lived, and veterans homes to be required to take COVID-19 patients. Now, I want COVID-19 patients to be cared for. I have a 57-year-old friend who passed away in March of last year. My wife had a 54-year-old coworker who passed away. It hit home for us very closely. But for the governor and the legislature to tout how people were being discharged from hospitals, but never saying where were they being discharged to. And people like my mother, Artemis Pappas, 95 years old, was being put at risk because they were required to take these folks. Now, people should have been cared for. I support that. I don't want anyone to think that I don't want people to be cared for, but Phil Murphy is being investigated by the Department of Justice under a Biden administration because of these questionable practices.
Time. Mr. Zwicker, the issue of independent investigation on the nursing home deaths.
So my mom was also in a nursing home the same time yours was. And Fortunately, she did not pass away from COVID-19. But I was there every week, multiple times a day, multiple times a week, caring for her, watching the staff of that nursing home care for her and care for every other resident that was there. It was heartbreaking times. The governor had to make some very, very difficult decisions at a time when it was difficult to even know how this virus spread. I was terribly scared for my own mother. I was also unbelievably thankful for the support of the nurses and the caregivers and the doctors and the administrators of her nursing home, just like every other nursing home in this state. Do we need to look backwards and see what we could do better before the next health crisis happens? Yes, we do. We absolutely do. But we also have to be thankful for every single care provider and every single nursing home throughout our state who had to do just a tremendous job during the most difficult circumstances.
My mother
30
received,
seconds.
My mother received great care, and I have great respect and admiration and affection and appreciation for those folks and people like them. But again, I had opportunities to speak to people in the governor's office. I was on daily calls with municipal officials and county officials, state officials, and would ask people from the governor's office to offer explanations, ask questions such as comments in my comments a moment ago. Never any responses. Some legislative offices were represented, not always all of them. Legislative oversight, again, you didn't do it.
The next question goes first to Mr. Zwicker. What should be our environmental priorities to protect the state of New Jersey, its businesses and its families with the changes in climate and all that is causing? So what are your environmental priorities?
So it's a bunch of different things that all have to occur at once. First of all, as we talked about in a previous question, we want to reduce New Jersey's consumption of fossil fuels to help decarbonize, do our share to decarbonize the air. We know that this is a national and global problem, but New Jersey can and is becoming a leader. We also have to start to work very hard on making our existing buildings more energy efficient. About 40% of the energy that we consume in New Jersey right now is in our warehouses and our larger structures. And we can save tremendous amount of energy by putting forth programs to help building owners make their HVAC systems and their lighting systems and their insulation systems more energy efficient. It's the lowest hanging fruit. And then we have to electrify. We have to electrify our transportation system, our cars, our light trucks, our buses, and we have to do so in a way to make sure that people have the ability to charge their cars up because we are moving to an electric transportation system. To do this is lots of different moving parts, but they all have to occur together so that we can rapidly meet our energy goals.
Mr. Pappas.
Could you repeat the question again, please? Make sure I...
Small number.
Yes, and I did a little editing, so I apologize. What are your environmental priorities to protect the state of New Jersey, its businesses and families that live here, in light of changing climate and all the issues we're seeing related to that? So your environmental priorities.
When I first served in local government, the environment was the reason I got involved. There was massive development being proposed, and I opposed it because it destroyed environmentally sensitive areas and our agricultural areas. Continued that as a member of the county governing body, supporting farmland preservation programs that literally preserved hundreds, if not thousands, of farmland in Somerset County. As a state legislator, we have the opportunity to enact laws or propose things, set priorities fiscally, and What you've done, Mr. Zwicker, really falls short. Talking about diversifying of energy consumption options for people is very, very critical. But I also think that understanding the economic cost, the environment is, there's an economic environment as well as the environment in the pure sense of the words. And again, cost of energy consumption. I'm not going to repeat what I said about Northern Europe, but in this part of the state, most of us have JCP&L as the electric provider. And around here, a lot of people are getting gas generators for their homes because a storm with trees that we have here will knock out their energy, their electricity to their homes. And I think there's a practical side for how these kinds of things will impact people. There cannot be, in my mind today, quickly, a shift to reliance upon energy because of other considerations that hopefully I can elaborate on later.
Can I?
Yes, 30 seconds.
While I certainly expected you to criticize me on a variety of different topics, I didn't expect to be criticized on the environment. I am, year after year, tied for the highest rated environmental legislator in either house. I have written and sponsored more than 25 bills when it comes to protecting our environment.
Please hold your applause. Mr. Pappas, do you wish to respond to him?
I admire anyone who says that they are supportive of protecting the environment, but again, there are measures that what has been accomplished. I can point to communities that have environmentally sensitive areas that have been preserved, partially on my watch. I can point to programs that have preserved land through support of taxpayers on my watch. And I haven't just talked about things in theory. I've gotten things done.
The next question will go first to Mr. Zwicker. It was one that was submitted online. Before the pandemic, in January of 2020, legislation to remove the religious exemption from getting vaccinated for school children failed to pass in the New Jersey Senate. Should this or similar legislation be reconsidered?
Thank you. Even as the questioner asked, even before the pandemic, vaccines and vaccinations were a topic on many people's minds. I've met with countless families, parents who have been concerned about their children, about the safety of vaccines. And we've talked about this because I fully understand that the one thing a parent wants to do is protect their children. That's what I want to do. I'm sure that's what you want to do. We also have to follow the science, and we have to have the science guide us in making these sort of decisions. And vaccines have been shown to be safe. Does that mean that adverse things don't happen? No, of course not. But vaccines save lives. And so we have to do everything we can to save lives. And I am a sponsor of the legislation that was in, that you're referencing, to say that the one exemption we will allow is for a physician and a family member to say that there's a medical reason not to have a vaccine. But the legislation would remove a religious exemption.
Mr. Pappas.
I would vote as Kip Bateman would vote, which is not how he would vote. Religious traditions in our country are sacred, and I believe that those kinds of provisions need to be maintained. The vaccine is important for many people. I advocate people to be vaccinated if they believe it does not go against their religious convictions, or if there's a medical condition. I have a family member who is allergic to the components of all of the present vaccines that are available. This individual has been advised by their physician not to take the vaccine. So what would they do? I know I'm going a little bit beyond the question, but it's relevant to this topic. There are people who categorize people, vaccinated and the unvaccinated, as two groups. You know who said that? Andrew Zwicker said it. He said, we have two groups in New Jersey, the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. We have one group of people in New Jersey. There was a rally in Trenton where there were thousands of parents there to oppose a vaccine, or excuse me, a mask requirement. He was caught on tape, looking at the crowd, making a gesture, a dismissive gesture, while these people were there. That's not what Mike Pappas would do.
Please. You want?
Sure, thank you. Thousands of New Jerseyans have died from COVID-19. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Americans in this country, and millions around the world. We have got to do what is right for each other. We have to take care of each other, and we have to stop politicizing masks and stop politicizing vaccines.
Mr. Pappas. Now more than ever, it's important to ensure young voters are educated and get involved in governmental process. What can we do to promote youth engagement in government and politics?
Well, I started in my early 20s, and I did so because I was interested, but I did so because there were many adults that encouraged me to get involved. So I have made it part and parcel of what I do is to encourage younger people to be involved in every way possible, whether it's involving them in community efforts, in political campaigns, members of my staff. Many people did a lot for me, and I have always continued to do that and will continue to do that. I've also been involved as a youth volunteer through the 4-H program. I've been fortunate to engage with thousands of young people for 25, 30 years, and will continue to do so because they are our future. I think it's critically important to be available, to recognize that they are our future, and to involve them in every way possible.
Mr. Zwicker?
I entered the legislature, my desire to run for public office was driven by two things. One was climate change and the crisis that is in front of us, and the other was civic engagement and getting young people involved in our local government and in our civic process. The first bill that I ever wrote is called the New Voter Empowerment Act, which allows 17-year-olds to vote in a primary election if they're 18 by the time of the general election. Because once a voter, always a voter. It's that important to get people engaged. I have been fortunate to be with a staff of young people, of young students who have helped in all sorts of facets of what we do in the legislature. What I've seen in the last few years is such a sense of optimism as young people, as some in the audience right now, have gotten involved in our local government because they know that they can and will make a difference. And they are making a difference. When young people gather by the millions to say that we will not accept anything but changes in how we are impacting our climate, then people are listening. I've seen young people again say, we will not accept the social conditions, the racial conditions in this country. And again, they're making a difference. So I am very optimistic by what I see from young people.
If I may?
Yes.
Talked about some of what I did, and I'm going to emphasize his dismissive gesture to thousands of people, families, young people. Attitude was not one of a leader who claims to be supportive of encouraging people to be involved, and there were a lot of young families there. I want to mention one other thing, that the young people that of this age group, maybe a little bit older, Vinnie spoke of it, the economic struggle that they are encountering in New Jersey because of lack of affordability, things have to change. Costs have to be reduced, and he will continue to support policies that drive people like them out of the state.
Final question before close. You'll go first to Mr. Zwicker, similar to what was asked of the Assembly candidates, but from the audience. What are your legislative priorities if elected?
My legislative priorities, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected to the state senate, are the same legislative priorities that I've had in the General Assembly. And there are three places. One, that we didn't get a chance to talk about tonight, is how can we use technology and innovation to grow jobs? The innovation economy that it's often called. How can we ensure that ideas that come out of our universities, our community colleges, or someone's garage can grow into the next business that thrives here in New Jersey? Second, which has come up, is climate change. And what are the policies we need to put forth to ensure that we protect clean air, clean water, and open land for New Jerseyans? And third is access to voting. While other states have been making it harder and harder for people to vote, I am proud to be one of the legislative leaders when it comes to early voting, when it comes to making sure that our vote by mail ballots are all counted, to ensure that our elections are safe and that they're available to all. If I'm so fortunate to win this election, that's what I'll continue to do in the New Jersey State Senate.
Mr. Pappas.
I think affordability is the #1 issue in the minds of the people that I've talked to, thousands of people that I've talked to since entering this race. I talk of unfunded mandates. Body cameras is one example, but it's a philosophical approach. Are you going to advocate for things and require local governments to provide the service without the funding? Then you're voting to increase property taxes. It is that simple, and you have done it time and time again. I understand local government. I've not been on a school board. I understand how it operates. I understand the funding mechanism. I will not ever vote for an unfunded mandate, no matter what the program. If I feel something is important enough, then I should have the guts to advocate for funding it. It's as simple as that. And I think that property tax, income tax increases, such as those that you have advocated for and supported, will not be what Mike Pappas will do. I will tell you that. Government, legislative oversight is another area I've spoken about here. No matter who governor, I believe Jack Ciattarelli will be the governor. No matter who the governor is, I will take legislative oversight as one of my primary constitutionally mandated requirements. I will seek membership of the Legislative Oversight Committee and the State Senate, because if people in the state legislature do not hold the executive branch accountable, then we will continue to be frustrated moving forward.
Thank you. It's time for closing remarks and 90 seconds each. Mr. Pappas.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your interest. And for those who are not with us here today, hope that you will take away some of the contrast between myself and Andrew Zwicker. I do believe there is a very clear contrast between the two of us. I believe I have a very deep and thorough understanding of the property tax challenges and the struggles of the small businesses. I was fortunate to serve the United States Small Business Administration, and just a comment about that. I served there right after 9/11. Devastation that I saw in small businesses, not just in New York City, but even in New Jersey, was devastating. The parallels for me are very clear between the devastation to our small business sector then and the devastation to the small business sector today. As was said a number of times, 1/3 of all small businesses have closed their doors permanently. I will make support for programs and a budget that would be supportive of the opportunity that small business owners are looking for. Priority, one of my major priorities. That has not been Andrew Zwicker's focus. He has talked about some very worthy goals. He's a physicist, he's a brilliant scientist, and I admire him for his service in that realm, but there's no practicality in what the people of New Jersey are suffering with today. And I believe I understand what needs to be done today. Thank you.
Mr. Zwicker.
Thank you. Thank you for moderating. Thank you to the Montgomery News, Princeton Community Television, Raritan Valley Community College for this evening, and for all of those who are watching at home, or for those of you who are here tonight. In 2015, I won my first election to the Assembly by 78 votes, underscoring the importance of never taking anyone's support for granted. Every vote must be earned. Over the last 6 years, I've worked to earn your vote each election, and now I'm asking for your support to represent you in the state Senate. As a scientist in government, all of my decision-making is rooted in fact and evidence of an issue. It does not forget the fundamental fact that policy affects people. That's why I not only champion issues of science and technology, or economic issues of job creation and innovation, but also women's health care and healthcare access more broadly, expansion of voting rights and access, and equality within all of our communities. We are emerging from what has been one of the hardest 18-month stretches in most of our lives, and we have a massive opportunity in front of us. We've been shown structural faults within our society, and as an elected official, and those of us who are hoping to continue, we have a responsibility to address them. I am proud of the work that I've done in the Assembly over the last 6 years. There is so much more to be done. I hope that my record has earned your support, and I hope to become the next senator of the 16th Legislative District. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank you for your participation, and I did not do this before. It's something I traditionally do. There were a lot of questions here I did not get to, and I apologize, and I like to just tell people and the candidates some of the other questions that were out there. One about, we often hear about the budget. What can you cut from the budget? How should we handle our pension system? Question about voting rights. Question about overdevelopment and flooding, and how that all ties in with actions that the legislature or elected officials should be taken. Question about women's choice, pro-choice, and a question about who you believe should be taxed to support the kind of government we seem to want or we seem to need. So again, you've heard about the sponsors. I want to thank all of them again, and remind you, in case you weren't here for the previous forum, that you have 3 ways to vote. You can request a vote by mail ballot from your county clerk, and then you return that voted ballot either by mail or in a drop box, or by delivering it to your Board of Elections office. There's early voting for the first time this year. It begins on Saturday, October 23rd through Sunday, October 31st. And again, that's voting on machines, which for many of us will be new machines. And if you're not voting by mail or voting early, obviously we expect you to vote on Election Day, November 2nd, at your polling place between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. So check your county clerk or Board of Election websites to find out all the details about where drop boxes are, and make sure, look at your sample ballot to make sure your precinct hasn't changed if you're voting on Election Day. Or you can go to vote.nj.gov and find all that information, since it's all the sites are county-based. So thank you again very much for your attention and your questions, and the candidates for responding to the policy issues that you asked them to address. And good night.